Today's show is an interview. We're actually interviewing for the first time this season, and it's with Raul Prados, who is an engineer, and he's engineered and engineering for Penske and people like Montoya. He's been around, and I've worked with him before. Great guy, and he can give you an insight to what it takes for a driver to succeed, what he looks for in a driver, and anyone who's into engineering, I think you're going to like this. Raul, welcome to the Race Driver Coach Show. You're the second engineer I've ever interviewed on here, but you're the first one of the year, like first interview at all. I haven't done any, so I've been a bit naughty and been working away and stuff. So it's time to do some interviews. So welcome.
Thank you. Sounds great. I feel flattered to be here with you here in the afternoon.
Brilliant. And engineering is obviously, it's a part of a race driver's career that is super important. And I think people miss out on it for all sorts of reasons, like to get ahead in their career. It's important that they know a certain element of the engineering side, which I'll ask you about how important is that in a moment. And also it's just good to see it from your perspective, because we always see it from the race driver's perspective, but the people that work in the industry, they give us real eye-opening moments of, oh, that's how it all works. That's what you look for in a driver. So really, I want to personally cover those type of topics from your angle. But as normal, it's just a chat between me and you. So to start with, just give the folks that are watching a bit of your story so far.
All right. So as you said, my name is Raul Prados, and I'm 42 years old. I'm a race engineer. I work for Team Penske, and I'm now assigned to the sports car program. So we're currently developing the new LMDH, the Porsche 963. And yeah, that's who I am today.
How's it all start?
I started a long time ago. Since I remember, right? Like I started influenced by my brother, who is a racing fanatic, everything, motorcycle, cars. I remember we were just waiting for Sundays just to watch this Ayrton Senna versus Alain Prost battles, you know. And you just told me that you're a Mansell fan, but
yeah,
we're more supporting Ayrton Senna, you know.
I was a Mansell fan, sorry, but it was and actually I didn't like Senna because it was Mansell versus Senna, and then as soon as he passed away, I'd like to say I was the biggest Senna fan ever. It's something happens, don't they? When they pass away, they become a legend, and I was obsessed. So I do get it. I completely get it.
Yeah, before it was your enemy because he was still fighting your hero, right? Yep. But I am a Nigel Mansell fan. I'm a bigger fan of Ayrton Senna.
Yep.
So yeah, I remember when I was 14, my grandfather passed away, and he left us a little bit of money, and with my parents' help, we just bought a little go-kart. So I started going to the go-kart place. Never intended to be a race car driver, you know, just having fun.
Yep.
Until one day, the owner of the track is also the owner of the team, of a go-kart team, and he asked me if I wanted to go to a race with them. Yep. And I said yes, and ever since that day, I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Mega.
So yeah, I did cars for a long time while I was studying my degree. You know, I think it was for about 12 years. I counted.
What degree is it? What's it actually called?
Mechanical engineering. I mean, I didn't study for 12 years. You know, I started at 14.
Yeah.
And I finished my degree at 23, I think, and then I stayed a little bit longer in karting because I like it so much. You know, when I was studying, you couldn't enjoy it full time because you were so busy in school.
Yeah.
So I stayed for a little bit longer until I said, okay, it's time to go to cars. So I actually started quite late in cars. You know, I first found my first job in cars. The first one that I actually got a salary from, it was in Spain in Seat Sport. And it was, funny enough, Carlos Sainz's dad gave me a hand to get in there, you know. And I was as a designer. So I was there in the office, like designing part of gearboxes and stuff like that, which I didn't enjoy very much. I had to be at the racetrack. So I sent my resume to every single British F3 team, and only one of them responded. But once he responded, I knew I couldn't let it go, you know. So I just kept calling and calling and calling. When am I getting my chance? And in 2007, they signed this young Spanish driver, Albert Costa, who is now doing some GT racing.
Yeah, I know him. Yep.
Yeah, and you also know one of my go-kart drivers, Javier Tarancon.
Yeah, Tarancon. It's all the same kind of era, that.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did 1 year of F3, and after that I had the chance to go to GP2, and I think it was end of 2011. I jumped to the United States to do IndyCar. I had the opportunity.
Yep.
And so I took it. I was with AJ Foyt for 5 years, and after that I had the chance to go. Well, I had the chance to go to Penske. I opened the chance to go to Penske. You know, once you go to the United States, might be not so popular over here, but when you go there, you know they stand out, right? Like Team Penske is like yeah. I don't know how to describe it, but it's the team to be with. You know, it's like the ones that they
Definitely.
Yeah. So I knew at some point I wanted to be with them. You know, so I prepared for a few years, and once I thought it was time, I just knocked on the door, and it was actually Chris Harfield for WHA's who gave me Tim Hendrick's contact. So I emailed him, and for every reason that he told me why not they couldn't employ me, I gave him a reason why they should employ me. And at the end of I think it was end of 2016 season, he gave me a call. He's like, "Well, we have an opening. We'd like to meet you." And that was
You got to respect that. I'll tell you what, straight away. I always do this when I ask people's story. I can't help but jump in and ask questions that are kind of relevant to people that are watching, and to me, actually, to what I teach. But your perseverance to make it as an engineer, to go to America, well, to go from the being in the office to the racetrack, like, no, I want to do that. I'm going to call all the different teams in England in the British F3. And as soon as they give me a sniff of a chance, I'm on them. And then it happened in Penske. So this is you. This is you as an individual going for a dream and doing whatever it takes, right?
Yeah.
And if someone slightly opens the door, you're in. You've got your foot in there. And that's what I want to see more drivers doing, because they're, on the whole, they're not smashing down the doors of people. They're not saying, give me the drive. I'll show you that I'm fast. I'll do exactly what you want. Give me a chance. They're not doing that nowadays. It's more like, I'll send an email. This is at best case scenario normally. Send an email, and obviously you never get an answer because everyone's too busy. And then they leave it at that, and they say, well, I tried. But with every single successful person, because I'd say you're successful in your part of the motorsport industry, they have that about them. It's that dogged going after the stick. And if someone slightly wags a stick at you, you're on it, and it's perfect. So thanks for just covering that, because that's really important.
But that's the thing, right? Like I didn't do it thinking of anything. It's like, I really want this. I'm gonna do whatever it takes. But the reality, once you pass that time, you think it's like, just because they tell you no, it doesn't mean that you don't deserve the chance. They don't know you.
Yep.
So you need to put yourself in a situation where you get a chance given, so you can prove that you're worth having, right? And I think that's the same on everything, right? I mean, in engineering, it might be a little bit easier because we don't have a time span where you're out of date. Let's sort of,
but still, it's
right. Like,
they get so many emails. I mean, I, as a coach, get a lot of emails from people asking questions, saying I'm the next big thing and all this, and you don't answer it because you've got so many and you miss it. Simple as that. And these guys are 5 times busier than I am. So them not answering isn't a no. Them answering quickly is just, oh, he's another one of them. Just say no because we're busy. You haven't actually sat in front of them, so they don't give you the actual answer that's possible. So until you keep going back and stand out a bit, they're like, okay, the hunger's there. It must be serious. Let's give him a chance. It's amazing how often that works. 50% of the time, I'd say.
Yeah.
So yeah, congratulations for doing that. But that's Penske. That's a big one. Everyone knows Penske.
That's a big one, and I had a lot of help. Like when they cracked the door open, I had a lot of help from Chris, like a lot of advice on how to do it right, how to approach the bigger company. I've been very, very lucky. That's for sure.
That's cool. And lately, it's all endurance, right? So no more IndyCar.
No more IndyCar. I joined Penske already for the Acura program, but they still gave me a chance to run They gave me a chance to run IndyCars several times. But obviously in 2017, it was like a dream come true, right? I was able to run the Indy 500 with Team Penske with Juan Pablo Montoya as a driver. That's one of the highlights of my career, you know.
Yeah.
I think this is very important, not for drivers, but also for engineers, for young engineers who want to perform at the sport, right?
Yeah.
So usually the Indy 500 is 16ths, right? So we came out with a level of downforce, like whatever downforce was, and at that year, Honda had an advantage over. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but it looked like Honda had an advantage over.
Okay. Yeah.
So every time a Honda got to the front, the average lap speed was about 2 miles an hour faster. And then our teammate, Helio Castroneves, had an accident early in the race, and he broke a part of the car that reduces the drag. And he was around P2 all the time, and he was pretty fast.
Okay.
So I thought, if we need to win this race, we can't add the downforce. We have to have low drag, otherwise we're not going to be able to fight. When a Honda gets in the front, it's 2 miles an hour faster. When it's 20 laps to go, you have to be there. And Juan kept saying, you know, we don't have enough downforce. We need to add downforce. And for like 2 stints, I not argue it because I'm not an argumentative person, especially not to my driver, but I was trying to convince him, like, look, we have this information that you don't have, and we think this is the way to go.
Yeah.
By the, I think it was like the 4th, 5th stint, I don't remember exactly. We ended up having the downforce, and he was just flying.
Wow. Okay.
He was right, because he was right. He didn't have all the information, but he was able to feel it. You know, if we have to pass people, it's not about your top speed, it's about how close you can run in turn 2. It's how close I can get to them, and then the toe will do the rest. And we only had the time to end up 6th.
Yeah.
At the start of the last stint with the downforce, we were like around P10, P11. If I would have done it, if I would have listened to my driver, if I would have done it sooner, if it's just looking at the numbers, I would just go with the feeling of my extremely good driver. We would have a better chance to fight for a top spot.
Damn it! But that's what you learn, and it's a balance, isn't it? I mean, he was fairly switched on, right, on the engineering, on the car side, what it's doing.
Juan is obviously an incredible driver. No need to explain who that is, but he does understand the race car a lot, and he's able to simplify very complex things. It's an extreme help for an engineer. You know, obviously he's super talented, but he's also super good at giving you feedback and helping you make the car go quick for him.
Yeah, I believe it's important. I mean, I noticed that about Verstappen, Jos Verstappen. He virtually built that F3 car. And he built the engines that are in the kart for Max as well. And it's like that guy, it's the old school kind of approach where they don't just master the craft of driving. That's just part of it. They actually know that it's motor sport. And obviously the driver can go too deep into thinking about the car, of course. But when they're switched on and they give you feedback and you trust them, they trust you, it's magic.
Right. So that's the difficult bit, right? Like you have to be engineering inclined enough to help set up your car, but you don't have to be an engineer. You just have to guide the engineering. Like what do I actually need to be fast? And then you have to have a little bit of a database of how things feel, because it helps the engineer to understand what changes he should do, you know, like, but you don't have to be extremely complex to where it's counterproductive, right? Like you're always arguing with your engineer because you think you know better. It's a fine line, you know. It's a very fine line. But the good ones, they have like just the right amount.
Yeah. So when you've got like a junior driver, I mean, I don't know how much work you did with kids that are 16, 17, even 14, 15. How do you engineer them compared to a 35-year-old or a 30-year-old Jack Hawksworth?
I was very different back then. I didn't know very much. You know, I think my career got shaped pretty much after Jack. When I joined Penske, I had a bit of a different view, right? Like, but still, Not the kids back then, but even talking to the kids nowadays. I follow a lot of racing. I'm in touch with a lot of young drivers, and
Yeah.
I don't think they're very different. I think the good young drivers, they might not know as much, but they show glimpses of how do I say it? I don't know, like your man Oliver Bearman, right? Like you talk to him, he knows. Like you can tell, like he is mature enough to guide a race engineer.
Yeah.
He knows what he wants, and he doesn't need to know what mass transfer is, or I don't know what stalling of a rear wing is, or whatever, you know. But he does know how it feels. He does know how he wants the car to feel, and that's no different, you know. Like that is no different. With experience, they just build their database. With
Yeah.
experience, now, oh, this is how spring is different from an anti-roll bar, or this is how aero balance is different from front camber, or something like this, right? Like they
Yeah.
just start building the database of how things feel. And as an engineer, you have to help them as well, right? Like it's not good to say, oh, I'm going to make this change and you tell me what it does. You actually, I mean, we help them. Like,
Educate.
yeah, we educate them because at the end they will help you, right?
Yeah.
Like that feels like I need more front camber because this is how it felt back then, or whatever it is. Like every setup of the car has a speed sensitivity, has a face of a corner sensitivity, right? And they all feel a little bit different. Like if you want to improve the front end of your car, you can soften the front bar, you can soften the front springs. It's not the same, right?
Yeah.
Even or increase your aero balance or something like this. They're not exactly the same changes. The good drivers will guide you to understand which
It's
one.
funny actually. And at the young age, it's easy just to sit down, not say a word, jump in the car, do a lap time, come back, give you feedback, and that's all you do. And a lot of junior teams now, they don't even tell you what changed. You kind of sort of said it then. They don't tell you what change they do. They just say, try that. And they won't tell you because it's obviously like a team secret. They don't want to tell their drivers what they're doing because the driver will tell other people next year, blah, blah, blah. So there's all sorts of reasons. There's a bit of a clash there. But what I noticed, like for Ollie, for example, if you put him in an environment or a team where they never told him anything about the car, his brain would blow. He's like, I need to know. I need to know what I'm going to expect. And the amount of times he comes in and just say something like, I need a bit more front wing and roll bar, he will actually say it. And this is like when he was 16, he was like this. And he was wrong some of the times and throw the race away because of it or the qualifying. But I tell you what, that was a good way to learn. It's having the confidence to do that, you know, and the intelligence.
His database got bigger,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
was expecting this, and the result wasn't exactly this. How was that different? Now I know, right? It's a bit. It's a
And
bit.
you remember if
and
it's big. Yeah.
Especially if you're wrong.
Yeah, that's a big lesson.
Right.
So thinking now, have you seen some drivers coming up that you're thinking are good?
It's difficult. It's difficult to find out which ones are going to develop to be a professional race car driver, right? But there are a few that stand out, right? Like when I'm watching these younger drivers developed, I always look for is there anything that makes them stand out? You know, is there anything different about them? And it's quite difficult because at that age, between 13 to 16, they're not fully developed, right? You just know where they're going to go, right? Like just because right now they're not the driver they're going to be, it doesn't mean that they're not going to develop to be an amazing driver in the future, right? Like it's quite tough. But when I'm watching these go-kart races or F4 or anything, you know, F3, I'm always looking for like, is there anything that makes them stand out? You know, and there are a couple that caught my eye. You know, there is
Yeah.
one of them. I'll tell you. I won't give you names, but I'll tell you things that make me think. Right. So there is one young driver that his will to win is bigger than anything else. Right, and that cannot be taught. You either have it or you don't. You know, when coming second is more painful than anything that it can happen.
Yeah.
You can't teach that, right? So that's one of the things, right? Like everything else, the speed is very difficult to teach because the speed comes along with the feeling, and it's very difficult to tell a driver, oh, your rear grip is going to be good at this exact point. They kind of know, you know. That's something that I've never fully. I'm not a driver, so I don't know, you know. But I look at the data. It's like, how does this driver know that he can apply the throttle just a little bit sooner than this other driver? You know, I something that I don't know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The feeling.
Yeah, And then there is another young kid who went to the World Championship and with no experience in the category, with no experience with the car or the track, he qualified. He qualified up front and he stayed up front. You know, so this kid is doing that with no previous experience, right? Like, so that's, to me, that stands out. Like the kid barely knew how to start the go-kart. You know, in fact,
they stand on the when they're on the limit as well, and how fast they learn is ridiculous. I know simulators help this now, but we were at a race this year in F3, and the kid had never been to Spa. Everyone else has, because it's quite a popular track. And lap 1, 2, and 3, I think, of free practice, he was already purple sector in. Like, God, man, you've never seen the track before. And going through Pouhon fast, like there's not much left already. It's lap 1. There's not much. I can't really tell you to go in that much deeper because it looks pretty much on the limit immediately. And I noticed it with many drivers that have got the skill. They're just purple sector in immediately. As soon as it's the first test in a car, their first race weekend in the car, they're at the front. The Lawsons and the Stanaways, they're good at that as well. It's just, and Grosjean, just their immediate bang. Because they know what a car feels like in the limit. They drive to that. They don't need a debrief for you to tell them where to go quicker.
But that's the thing, right? Like, how do you teach somebody where the limit is? Or know where the limit is. Where the limit is, you can say, oh, go this corner at this speed, then go faster and faster. But how do you teach a driver how the limit feels?
That's the skill side. You know what I mean? I mean, they can train it and they can get it through knowledge. But if you're just throwing them on track and teaching them brake shapes, this is what you've got to chase. Their head is so focused on process and something that's probably not even relative for that day. So you say, right, it's got to be, well, probably that. It's got to be this brake shape, right? It's got to be a big peak and down and bleed off. But you're like, hang on a minute. There's actually more rubber down today. There's headwind. There's all this stuff, right? And you're approaching slower. So it's like, no, I'm afraid you've got to drive with the seat of your pants. And that is, I hate to say it, it's a skill that some people are born with. And I know we're in a world where everyone's equal now in terms of everyone has I agree with that. You can learn different ways, but there's certain people that can throw a basketball better when they're 5 years old compared to others. There's a lot of it there in feel and trust and just their character as an individual, their rules, beliefs. I'm going to go and push to the limit until I know I can't go anymore. Where some people will go out there thinking, I can't crash. It's risky out there, or they've got something in their mind from last time when it didn't go well, or I'm going to build up gently. They're just different. There's so much in the pot that creates a driver, which is what I spend my life decoding, obviously. But that is a trend. These guys just dance with the car.
Yeah, but then from the engineering side, there is this shelter for the engineer. Oh, your teammate is fast with this setup. You should drive this, and this is not correct.
Yeah.
Right? For me, driving should be like it's breathing or going down the stairs. Actually, Simon Pagano told me that, right? Like breathing should be so natural, so you can to go as fast as you can possibly go. It should be natural for you. You don't have to be thinking about driving, because if you do, you're always going to be slower. Yeah. And it's true. It is absolutely true. That's why one of the job of the engineer is to make sure that your car is working in the correct operating window, but it also feels right for your driver, because you can get a lot more from your driver than you do from the car. And I think this is a unique way of thinking nowadays, but I stand for it. I truly believe in it. You know,
you got to be an artist, right? It's like freehand drawing, and then telling the artist to go dot to dot on a piece of paper, it destroys their flair.
Yeah.
For some people, there is a window, a very small window when you're in a car going fast, where even if a gust of wind comes, you're off. A tiny gust of wind, because you're that on the limit, and the car's moving in a way that you're familiar with and comfortable with. Any more, any less, it would react different. So you can even, like, you can brake a bit harder for a high-speed corner. All of a sudden, the car's trying to oversteer and it's undrivable as such. Yeah. They love that word, but it snaps on you. Where if you just turn in and then slightly adjust, all of a sudden the car's good. So it's just understanding all this and having that ability to dance. And if the driver has naturally just got a kind of aggressive turn in, which is really hard to get rid of if it's just you and you've got this flick about you, the engineer's like, right, okay, I can see that when he's either under pressure or really pushing, he has this tendency to ask the car to do a lot on entry. Let's give him something that allows him to do that instead of trying to re-educate and make him double think.
Yeah. For me, the only time where an engineer should tell a driver how to drive is the time where you can't adjust it, because there are things in a car that they're bigger than what you can adjust with a setup, or in occasions you can adjust a car for 11 corners of the track, but not for that 12.
Yeah.
Like I give you an example in Road America. Road America is heavily sided balance, right? So most of the corners to the left are oversteering, to the right are understeering.
Okay.
And you have turn 12 and turn 14 that they're very important corners for lap time, but they're always oversteering. So those are your limiting, they're your balance. They limit how symmetric you can make your car.
Yeah.
In those corners, you can tell your driver, okay, instead of turning into 12, it's really bumpy. So you say, just brake a little bit softer and do this.
Yep.
Because that way we can get rid of understeer in the carousel, which is a much more important corner for lap time and stuff like that. But it's the only time, right, with these unique events on track that you, as an engineer, you can do nothing about it without compromising too much.
Yeah, gotcha.
Other than that, I don't think an engineer should teach a driver.
No, obviously you have to when they're kids, but as you get up, and it's that just shows you that other engineers think the same. I know in F1 it's the same. They don't spend much time telling you how to drive.
Yeah.
It's more feedback on the car because they expect you to have that handled. They want to plug you in and not teach you how to drive, just plug you in and you're like a component. You work well. You work as they expect. And if you want to go into the driving, you sort of do it in your own time. So where you don't sort of, you're looking at it, you're trying to understand it, but you don't waste their time trying to learn the breaking points. Yeah, obviously that's again when you've been racing for 5 years or so, but it's what you need to get to. So the quicker you speed that up, the better. So I totally agree. So going back to engineering, if somebody is interested, because obviously you get different people watching this, how do you even start? Say if you're 16, 17, you want to get into motorsport, because I've got that as a question from somebody. I haven't got the money to race, but I love racing. And I want to become an engineer. Where do I start? It seems obvious, but what would you say?
Well, there are many different ways. I don't think there is only that one path. If you want to be an engineer, obviously the best way, and especially nowadays, is go to engineering school. Once you finish, now my advice to anybody who is doing this is, while you're doing engineering school, make sure you get attached to some kind of race team so you can actually learn what it's like. If you only go to engineering school and you don't get any real track experience, by the time that you finish, your formation will be less. And it's so competitive, right? Like there is a lot of engineers that come from school that they're fighting for these positions. If you've already been on track, you already have some experience. It doesn't matter if you're a mechanic, it doesn't matter if you're cleaning tires, you have been working with a race team. So that would be my advice. I did it with karting, I didn't do it with cars. But still, it served me to understand what life at the racetrack it is.
Okay.
And then it depends, right? Like there are many different types of engineering. You can be aerodynamicist, you can be mechanical engineering. There are a few masters that you can specialize in racing after that. I think all of it you learn with experience. But yeah, that's the main thing for me is. If you want to be an engineer, you're gonna need an engineering degree. Back in the day, you could just go from being a driver to an engineer. You could be from being a mechanic to an engineer. You had the understanding and you had the experience. With experience and understanding what things do to a race car, it was enough. But I think nowadays the cars are becoming very technological, and I don't see how it's gonna be less, right? Like if you look at F1 or this new generation prototypes. They have hybrid systems. With the hybrid systems, it comes with the brake-by-wire. With the brake-by-wire, it comes with a lot of mapping and stuff like that you're gonna need even for the drivers. Even for the drivers, you're gonna need that technical knowledge to be able to the drivers don't need to be engineers, but they're gonna need to understand. They're gonna become the ones that they are technically inclined. They will see a little bit more of an advantage. Because understanding the systems is actually is going to be quite a thing, because you could change the car before with your driving, you can change the car before with some of the tools you had. Nowadays, you can change them even more, right?
With systems. Yeah, and it is true actually, because I noticed that in England it's quite popular for you to become a mechanic first. If you're inclined, you know how to work a laptop, you read the data and all this. You then start performance engineering, which is just gathering all the data and getting it ready for the engineers. And then on the go, you kind of learn engineering. You understand how to set the car up. You probably went to do a bit of college, but there's a lot of people that just evolve through the team and become an engineer. And they're pretty good. But I think if you want to hit manufacturer level and what you're doing, then it needs that they're looking for the CV then.
Yes, the problem is not whether you can learn it or not. I don't think we don't send rockets to the moon. You know, like I think every single person who is interested by it can learn it. Even the technical stuff, like even the physics of a race car, are not as difficult, right? But the companies are going to be looking for that degree because in the future, there is a lot more simulation in client tasks and stuff like that. That's what they will require.
Yeah, you got to be comfortable with that, definitely. Okay, is there anything that you'd like to ask me to finish off?
Oof, I have so many questions for you.
Or anything that's just come up to mind?
So there was no, I actually do. You had a question for me, like what separate the good drivers from the best, you know? I was gonna reverse that one because I know what it makes a good driver for an engineer, what I like having in a driver, right? Like I want the simple feedback that can lead me. I don't need it to be complicated. I want it to be simple, right? And obviously, in a race car driver to be successful, you need them to be fast. You need to have that feeling that you were talking about before. How about yourself?
For me, it's more towards their work ethic, because it is kind of a, like I say, you're born with a lot of the skill, right? Like a tendency. You can have a brother and two brothers in the same family, brought up in the same way, but one jumps in, and from day one, they look like they've got something. The other one jumps in, and from year 5, they still haven't quite got it. And it's all the same coding, but they've got just different genetics, different rules. Not genetics, but they've got different rules. So there's an element of it that's kind of DNA.
Yeah.
You can learn to be as fast as these drivers, by the way, but there's just this tiny little bits where they kind of do it naturally without having to think about it. So that's a head start. They come to you with that kind of balance. They'd even be good on a motocross bike. You know, they can do different sports. They kind of have that about them, and we can't deny that that is there. They just got the head start, which you can catch up. But then I think it comes down to character and work ethic. It's how they approach their sport. Because if they're naturally talented, but they don't really put in the work to go that extra mile, to understand the craft, to understand their actual industry and how to become the best driver in all the areas, and it's fascinating to them, I want to win, that desire, it's difficult for them to go all the way, because when times get tough and then they're asked questions about their own skill level, and they start to ask questions about themselves. So I think it's mental. Their approach mentally is pretty much 80% of it.
Yeah.
You can just tell by the handshake, man, if they're a killer or not. And I use the words killer, warrior, psycho, because they're not normal. You know what I mean? If you put them into like when they got their lid on a racetrack, I'd love to hear their thoughts, because they're just pure execution, looking forward, and they're not even thinking about consequences.
They race like they're in a mission, right?
Yeah, don't care about what people think. Where a lot of people now, not now, but let's just take that word out now, but a lot of people, they go through all these filters of what if it doesn't go right? You know, questions like this. What if what happens last time happens again? What will certain people think? And if I'm slow, what's my dad thinking now? All this on top just completely kills the natural ability to drive. So it's those who can just execute and go without giving a damn about anything. It's people that are willing to win. Like you say, there's quite a few things, but you know, again, when you're face to face with them, when you're up against someone who's going to be good.
Yeah.
Natural ability as well, in terms of like when it's changeable conditions and they're looking on the track to see where the grip is, and they're trying things each lap, and you're like, oh, that's mental capacity there, the spare mental capacity to actually try and do that. And it takes confidence, because you might waste a lap, you might go off, But I do remember Max, because when we were competing against him, it was difficult in the wet. He was so good in F3. But it'd be a dry line on the braking line, and he would still be testing out the inside where it's damp. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? But he'd still go around the corner fairly quick, big rotation on the apex, and just figure it out. But then if it comes to a race where it's like that, he would always send it on the damp stuff. You're like, oh, he's never going to stop. But he does, because he's trained it and he's got the confidence to do it. And it's just like thinking like that is another thing.
Right. That's the thing, right?
And
Like
when I saw that in F3 and he signed to go to F1, everyone was like, he's too young. I was like, guys, you ain't got a clue what's coming. He's going to rewrite the rule book of how to drive in the wet. He's going to smash so many of you. And it was fun watching it all play out.
Yeah.
Now he is what he is, but he's always been that good. Even when he was 16, so he was that good. You just knew he'd be fine in F1. Like Kimi Raikkonen was the same, and Button. So they just have that, and they obviously, it must be in the former years as well. They must have this about them when they're 5 years old, tazzing around on a 3-wheel bike.
For sure, they have it from the start.
Yeah, so that's it. But again, you can take them on. If you're a methodical person, not a natural driver, but you've learned how to drive, you can do the same lap time.
Right, but that's the thing, right? Like that's a person who is going to be, obviously, is already several times world champion, is going to be a class in his history, right?
Yeah.
But there is many drivers that they make a living out of racing.
Oh yeah.
Those ones you see once in a blue moon, right? But they're not the only ones.
Yeah, that's it. Like Prost and Senna, I'd say they're two different characters.
Oh.
But you know, you'd say Prost actually was more successful. You never believe it, but he has got more championships, and he was as quick in qualifying very often. So yeah, it's not like you have to be this way.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
But it's that lion in you that actually just brings it home more times than often than not. But you have bigger crashes as well. You know, it's kind of like the Valentino Rossi way of approaching stuff. They're seriously switched on, but they've also got that warrior element. That for me is, I think it just inspires me to work with people like that. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
So I just I glamorize it a bit, I suppose. But it's, yeah, that seems to be the approach. You know, they'd be good in a fight when they're there, and they often are. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Awesome.
But anyway, mate, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for giving us your time, because I know people really want to know from your side. One more thing that always comes to mind is the reputation that a driver leaves with an engineer is really important. You know, they work with you as like, in some ways you work for them.
Yep.
But they also they've got to impress you, because I've noticed this world is so small that if they impress you, you can't help but tell people in the industry. That word gets around and it opens up opportunities.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So drivers understand that everyone you work with, it echoes. So if you're lazy, it echoes. They'll tell other bosses about you, and it closes doors before it even starts. Reputation.
Somebody told me the other day that the racing world is just a village.
Yeah. So small.
It's so small, yeah.
Yeah.
But it goes both ways. Eh? If you're a bad engineer to a driver, your opportunities are also slimmer.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, works both ways. Okay, Raul, thanks for everything, my friend. I'll speak to you very soon.
Bye.